All right, and I am happy to introduce you all to Telina Martinez-Barrientos from the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging to provide that high-level overview of the office's mission, initiatives, and future opportunities. Telina is a program manager too, and her work centers on strengthening county and departmental programs, services, and policies to advance equity in government. Telina has extensive experience managing programs and large-scale initiatives that center the community's voice and lived experience. Throughout the presentation, I encourage you to put any questions in the chat as they come up, and we'll be able to have time with Telina to do a Q&A session at the end of her presentation. So with that, Telina, I will turn it over to you, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you to the team of Office of Sustainability for inviting me to today's working group. I am excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and get our slides up there. Can I get slide 1 up? Thank you. Again, good morning. Before I start my presentation, I just wanted to do a quick poll from all of you, which is, if we can put the poll up, how many of you have had the opportunity to hear about our office, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging here with the County of Santa Clara? Just giving that a few more seconds just to make sure that we are able to get everybody. Okay.
All right, I'm going to end the poll and then I'll share those results right now.
Thank you.
Are you able to see the results?
There we are. Yep, now I can see them. Fantastic. So it looks like about 64% of you have had an opportunity to hear about our office, which is fantastic. That's pretty good. However, we have some work to do. We still have about a third of you, 36%, who have not had an opportunity to hear a little bit about our office. I'm not super surprised, since we are a fairly new office, and I'm excited to be here to share a little bit more about our office. And hopefully those of you that have heard about it will learn a little something new and or have an opportunity to ask some questions. So I will go ahead and get started now that I have a really good gauge of where we all are. Again, my name is Telina Martinez-Barrientos, and I'm the program manager with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging. Before we move over to the next slide, one thing I failed to do is kind of put in an agenda. So let me just kind of walk us through what we're going to talk about today. Today, we'll just talk a little bit about our office, our vision, and some of the goals that are surrounding our office. The county's journey to institutionalize equitable practices, the history behind that, and our current projects that we're moving forward with. And then we'll wrap up our conversation today with some opportunities for possible future engagement and some questions. So I'm hoping that over the next 15 minutes to 30 minutes that we'll have an engaging conversation. I am definitely a fan of chat questions. So if Tanya and team can help me with that, that would be fantastic. If we can have the next slide, please. Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. Little technical difficulty. This is the team. So our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging is made up of 4 individuals. Dr. Ana Lilia Garcia, Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. Dr. Garcia comes to us from another county department, from Public Health, where she was really leading the charge around equity work. She is our leader and is really a strong advocate for equity work here within government, and specifically here in the Santa Clara County. Myself, program manager, helping support these programs and initiatives. Heather Morgan is our senior training and staff development specialist, and Amber Siddle-Menace, who is our senior management analyst. We do have one open position that has not been filled, which is our research person, and we're hopeful that eventually we get that person, and then we'll be a fully staffed team of 5. Oh, sorry, a little bit of oh, there we go, a little bit of technical difficulty. Let me tell you a little bit about the journey to institutionalize equitable practices and how our office was established. So what we did here is we tried to capture milestones of critical moments within this process. However, there was a lot of work around equity prior to those milestones being captured. Individuals throughout the county have been doing work on equity work for years prior, but it was really, these are the milestones that we wanted to capture. So in 2015, the Public Health Department really wanted to advance, well, they made it a priority to advance racial equity. That was the priority. And so at 2015, they really took that underway and worked with community, and with our workforce to really identify and shape how to advance racial equity and health equity, and making it a priority. While doing that, and the work began, we realized that we needed support, right? And so in 2016 through 2019, we joined forces with the GARE Network, which is the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. The Public Health Department coordinated those efforts for the county and really brought in GARE as the specialist who came in and helped us create training, or help provide training and support to help us advance racial equity throughout. It was apologies, my headphones are not working well. There we go. It was an opportunity for us to really think about how we are going to operationalize advancing racial equity. And it was a great opportunity for us not only to do that, but to work cross systems with our partners within the county, as well as through with other jurisdictions. So the GARE membership is a collective of individuals throughout the nation that are coming together to advance racial equity. They are the experts in that area, and we really built upon their expertise to help us develop what we needed for the County of Santa Clara. Those 3 years or so were a great learning opportunity and a great expansion. As I mentioned, Public Health Department really took a lead in that, but as they did that, they were reaching out to different county departments and bringing them also into the fold and allowing them to have these opportunities. So come 2019, Public Health, alongside many other departments here at the county, were really working on racial equity work with the support of GARE. In 2019, we had a mass of individuals who were really excited about this work and really understood the importance of it. And we developed a steering committee with those individuals throughout the county. So partners through the probation department, social services, and so forth, all came together as a steering committee to help us really understand how we can move this work even more forward. And what came from that was contracting proposal with GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, to really solidify that relationship and help support our infrastructure. Also, in 2019, the Board of Supervisors created a referral for a county-wide participation in the GARE Learning Years. The Board of Supervisors recognized the value and the importance of participating in the GARE learning process and helping us in the workforce understand not just equity, but the inequities and how that translates into our programs and practices, and really wanted us to all engage in that process. Come 2020, though, as we all know, things shift. So although we had board support, we had a steering committee, we had investment throughout the county with different departments engaged in GARE, 2020 hit us. We all know what happened. It was a lot of challenge. We had COVID shutting everything down. We had the murder of George Floyd, social unrest. We had a reckoning of inequities throughout government, throughout all areas of our society. And we were trying to manage all of these many different factors. The Board of Supervisors recognized all of this, and they wanted to move past kind of these just general ideas of training and so forth. And they moved forward with an inclusive and collaborative approach and really made a commitment to equity within the county. And what that looked like is our office in part, but in many other things as well. So in 2020-21, I'm sorry, apologies, from 2020 to 2021, work was still being done, but we were also putting out fires at the same time, trying to manage all that has happened. As many of you guys know, we were disaster service workers, we were trying to get things done. But simultaneously, OBA took it upon themselves to pilot a budget equity tool. And they wanted to use the budget process in order to look at how that process might help shift the conversation and looking at equity while doing budgeting. So it was a pilot. We were doing as what we could during that time period, and with the support of all of the partners in the Racial Equity Steering Committee. And that continued to move forward. So the work was continuing to move forward despite all the challenges of 2020. 2022, the creation of our office, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, was launched. We were established. I started my position on January 10th, 2022, alongside Ana Lilia and Heather and Amber. And that is really the efforts from all the way from 2015 into now. We came on board, we realized there was a lot of work to be done, and there continues to be a lot of work to be done, but we were excited to get started. So that is in part how we began this process. I apologize, I'm having some technical difficulties moving slides.
Telina, if you just say next slide, Alice will be advancing those slides for you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
I thought I was, apologies. Thank you. As we moved from 2022 and our office being established, there was still work to be done. We had a work plan that was provided to us upon arriving. So we were managing a lot of the work that had been started and very much supported in the public health department. As I mentioned, Dr. Ana Lilia Garcia was at the Public Health Department prior to taking her position as the Chief Equity Inclusion Officer. And we decided that we would make sure that we honored all of those commitments there, as well as taking on our new work. Our vision is much like the county's, is to advance equitable strategies and to improve outcomes for all, very similar to our county vision. But our goal is to strengthen county departments and services and policies to advance equity in government. And we want to do this through three core ways. Establishing an organizational commitment, equity infrastructure, really thinking about what that looks like, the infrastructure for the entire county of almost 24,000 individuals. Operationalizing it. Looking at evidence-based principles of equity throughout the activities and our policies and programs, and really assessing how that is working out for us and what we might need to adjust and or continue. Cultivating partnerships, increasing our county partnerships. As I mentioned, we started this work back in 2015 and brought on many partners within the county in different departments. However, we want to increase that and encourage everyone within the county to connect with us and learn more about the efforts and programs that we're going to be working forward. So really thinking about doing that and doing it intentionally. We understand that everybody has so much on their plate, but we want to make sure that we're providing what we can and support those efforts. So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. As of right now, what we've been doing is really building our infrastructure within our department. What we realized is Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, we are right now a team of 4, and we are hoping to reach the entire county. So it's a big lift. And what can we do? So being really understanding the entire county and how we can best support them. So some of the services that our office will be providing or is already providing is consultation and technical assistance. Anything around equity or racial equity, we provide that type of service. A policy and practice reviews, helping support our partners and county partners when they're looking at perhaps a new policy. Is it equitable? Did we consider community voice? All of those things. Training and coaching. We're definitely working on training and coaching, both from our early adopters, those that were with us at the start, as well as some of our new partners that we're hoping to connect with. We consistently hold a community of practice. So all of our early adopters still meet frequently to have a peer network, much like this group, to kind of learn, engage, discuss things that are going forward. to help create a sense of community, monitoring and evaluation, and then coordinating our GARE membership. I mentioned GARE early on as the Government Alliance on Race and Equity as a network. They are an entity that does provide consultation and support to government agencies. And we are all GARE. Every one of us on this call are GARE. We are members to this network. And so we coordinate that network for conferences that they hold, trainings that they provide. They have an online portal where you can look at resources and information, and we help coordinate that. And if anybody's interested in learning more, I'd be happy to connect you to that portal and give you the information how to get connected. And then of course, data and best practices. We are definitely really want to, we recognize that when we're working on equity work, there is two levels, qualitative and quantitative, and we really want to be based both in our data, the numbers and the stories together. So really considering that. Next slide. So why are we doing this work? What is the reason? Why is equity so important? Local governments are really understanding that it's essential to creating equitable conditions for the communities all over. Race inequities are deep, they're pervasive, and we understand that we need to address it earlier rather than having to deal with it much later, where it can be much more challenging and costly. So when we look at it, we're thinking about infant mortality, life expectancy, race predicts how well we do. Our office definitely spends time looking at race, and we are race focused, but we're not race exclusive. We understand there's an intersectionality to this work. We all show up to this work as more than one person. I am more than Latina. I am a woman. I am a mom. I am all of these other things, right? And so we understand that people are multidimensional and it is intersectional. So although we do talk about race, it is not the only thing that we take into consideration. We also make sure that the reason why we do this work is because governments played a fundamental role in creating inequities. Throughout history, we see that, we know it. And so now we're trying to figure out a way that we can shift the conversation, shift the understanding, and help decrease those inequities. So those are some of the reasons that we do this work and why it's so important. Can I have the next slide? And so how will we do it? Because that's a huge undertaking. A lot of people always say, wow, Telina, that's great. And I completely on board, but how? Well, there is a growing field of practice to demonstrate that governing for racial equities, it's not possible, but it's essential. So that way we are helping increase outcomes for all and helping support outcomes for all. When one group does better, we all do better. And so that is how we consider that. What we want to do is look at the data. We're data focused. Again, data focused, not exclusive, but definitely focusing on the data. Understanding the institutional commitment and partnerships can help support this work. We want to change the conversation and the analysis and the operations in order to change how we do business here. And although when we say that, that can sound very big, we understand also that things take time and that it could happen small. And so simple processes meant, as I mentioned earlier on in this presentation, there was a pilot budget equity tool. OBA recognized that that could be a possibility, so they wanted to pilot it. So we recognize piloting is a process. We might make mistakes, but then we can try to do things a little bit differently next time and try to get it a little bit better. Recognizing moving power of the community to central in building racial equity, listening to our workforce as part of our community, really thinking about our workforce in that way and how we can do better for our workforce as well as the communities that we're all serving. If we have our workforce and we're taking them into consideration and they're doing work that's well and they have the tools and the necessary information, they can then better support the communities that we're serving as well. And the other most, I would say one of the more important ones is that the Santa Clara County is already taking steps to join this national field of practice. We're part of the GARE network, as I mentioned. We're providing learning and opportunities. And we are just one member in this huge network with GARE that we are able to learn from others within the nation and even at the federal level, how work is being applied, what policies, practices, and staying current on events that are not just happening now, but kind of at the forefront, really trying to stay us one step ahead. And the county has been really invested in that and has taken a strong commitment to this. And I'll tell you a little bit more how else that method will work out a little bit more in this presentation. Before we move forward though, we have a poll. So let me go ahead and have that poll taken. So now that you've heard just a little bit some of the matrix of service that I mentioned 2 slides ago, as well as kind of the reasons in the method, would anybody be interested in utilizing the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, whether it's consultation, information about the GARE network, anything in your department? I'll give that another second or two. I think we're about ready to close the poll. Yeah, okay, so great. A little more than half would definitely take advantage of that at this moment, and lots of unsures, which I expect, knowing that this is a new office, 8 months in, and we probably are talking about equity in most of our offices every single day. So that absolutely makes sense. And hopefully as time progresses and you are able to hear more information, learn a little bit more about us, there may be more interest, and perhaps you have all of everything. So that's also something that's I want to recognize as well. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those results. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide now. Okay, so I've talked a lot about what our office does, our vision, some of our goals, and they're very big goals right now. Again, we are 8 months in, so although we have a lot of tasks, we definitely have large goals that we're trying to achieve. And I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, because at the Board of Supervisor level, at our executive level, and also at the management level, oftentimes we do talk about this entity, GARE, Government Alliance on Race and Equity. As I mentioned, it's a national network of governments working to advance racial equity. Thank you. And they're really a support network and they're at the forefront, kind of understanding of all the information, all the best practices, and building pathways for new jurisdictions to start doing equity work. So I wanted to spend a minute just talking about that. Next slide. This network is not just 1 or 2 people. This is just California. We lead the way in racial equity work here in California. So the GARE network, this is an example. This is actually an outdated slide. I apologize, I didn't have a new slide to provide. But as you can see, there are many counties that are involved. They're using GARE network in terms of, in order to really understand equity within government. And it's a very specific network within government because we do very interesting work. You'll notice there's a capital cohort, so even the capital is involved in this, as well as many of these jurisdictions. And this is a national network. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first year that is actually, GARE has started working with the federal government and is a part of the Biden-Harris administration. And they actually have a whole document on racial equity and how they're going to implement some of those practices. Next slide. In order for you to understand a little bit more about how this work started, that journey to institutionalizing equitable practices, I thought it might be good if we just spent a few minutes looking at how it all began. So I have a short video that I'd like to present to you. It's about 4 minutes, a little less. If you could read that, then we'll come right back. I'm going to ask for you to go ahead and put the video through.
Hey, Telina, quick question before. We're a little bit short on time. Would you like to show the video, or would you like to move forward with the presentation? We can definitely send the link afterwards, but just wanted to do a little time check with you.
No, you know what? Let's skip the video because that's actually, they can see that on our SharePoint site. There's other places that we can see that. the point that I wanted you to see for the GARE video is really about understanding their theory of change. So when we talk about GARE, we're not GARE. We are the County of Santa Clara doing racial equity work and equity work throughout the county. And our theory of change was built upon many of the foundations that we learned from their learning years. And we use the normalize, organize, operationalize. So normalizing, creating a shared analysis and definitions, prioritizing that. Having those conversations about equity in our departments and normalizing those conversations as normal. Organizing, building internal infrastructures and partnerships. So making sure that we're all using that same shared analysis from department to department. And then operationalizing, using racial equity tools. I mentioned the ODEB because they're obviously highlighted in this presentation because they're creating a tool that it will help identify inequities as well as inequities. And then developing strategies to really drive results. And we'll go ahead, next slide. So some of the projects and initiatives that we're currently working on are our racial equity and learning program, providing some learning to some of the departments, a more in-depth deep dive into equity work and how they might be able to apply that to their practices and policies. Using a racial equity tool through budget decisions. I mentioned that earlier. Our communities of practice, having our early adopters engage and discuss some of the equity work that they're doing. And something I also want to highlight is an employee equity survey. We'll be launching on September 12th, an employee equity survey, and it's one input. It's a really important survey. I know we all have surveys, a lot of surveys in the county, but this is a really important one. Well, I guess they're all important, but this one is obviously I'm invested in much more. It's on September 12th. It's a very simple, less than 5-minute survey, about 15 questions, and it's asking just general information and knowledge about equity work within your department. For example, have I ever had a training on racial equity? Have I ever, do I know, does my department include equity in my analysis or practices or policies? Very general questions, just to kind of get a base and a pulse to see where we are as a county doing equity work. And it's so important because it is one input to a county-wide strategic plan on equity that is being created. And we wanted to make sure, again, as community, workforce community, you have a voice to provide your thoughts and process our input into this process, apologies, for this strategic plan. So please, more to come on the equity survey, September 12th. Check your emails, as well as we have a SharePoint site, I'll tell you more. And then engaging all of you, such as I am, such as today, showing up to meetings, cultivating partnerships and collaborations, and asking for any and all help that you're all willing to give. Last slide. So as I mentioned, there are opportunities for future engagement. You can follow us on our SharePoint site. I'll make sure I get that information over to Tanya, so when she sends out the notes, you'll have our SharePoint site. We also have an employee equity survey champion site where you'll be able to go on there, and we'll have a QR code to take the survey if you're in and be able to get it through your email. We'll connect with the Office of Sustainability in the future, and we're hoping to revitalize an equity working group that they had prior to the many things that have happened over the last couple of years. But we're really excited to continue that partnership or revitalize that partnership, and hope that many of you will also, and see how we can champion new work or existing work and reconsider it. So those are some of the opportunities for the future engagement. Last slide. I know we're short on time, but I really wanted to thank you for giving me this time today to talk to you a little bit about our office, share a little bit about some of the projects as well as our journey. We are an office with the County of Santa Clara, and I'm hoping to meet all of you someday in person outside of my virtual walls. But I invite any quick questions, or if there was anything in the chat prior to closing this out.